Hello, everyone. Today on View from the Summit, we're joined by Jason Bogardus, Managing Director and Private Wealth Advisor at Morgan Stanley's 545 Group, one of the most decorated wealth management teams in the country. With a background spanning Europe, Asia Pacific, and New York, Jason has spent decades advising some of the world's most accomplished entrepreneurs, executives, and family offices. His team has been ranked the #1 private wealth management team in America by Barron's for 3 consecutive years. We had an engaging conversation about building a career in finance, creating your own luck, and what it takes to manage significant wealth at the highest level. I hope you all enjoy our conversation as much as I did.
All right, so Jason, this is Jason Bogardus. You work at the 545 Group, Morgan Stanley, private wealth management. I'm going to start off with just a simple question I ask everybody. What's your connection to Sherwood?
We started spending time up here when our kids, who are now 18 and 20, were little, and we've been kind of on and off coming here for a long time. And then when it was time to start thinking seriously about a second home in ski country, Sugar Bowl was just at the top of our list because of the community and the skiing and the amenities and all that good stuff. Yeah.
Sweet. All right, so let's start with what did early school look like for you? High school. You started off in Portland, right? Mm-hmm. So what did you want to be in high school? How was that shaping?
I was not very focused on academics when I was in high school. And I was more focused on having fun. So I really had no idea. I mean, my parents were both in the medical field. And I think for me, much of my career story has been more about trying to identifying things that I definitely don't want to do, like process of elimination. So I knew I didn't want to be a doctor, and I knew I didn't want to be a pharmacist or a surgeon. And then, but the reality is, I just also, growing up in Portland, I had no clue what the business community looked like. I didn't really know what career paths existed. I knew nothing about finance or, technology. And also, back when I was a kid, career paths were much more simpler. There were the professional paths, like being a doctor or a lawyer, or, people owned restaurants or construction companies, or they were professors or teachers. Technology was just sort of becoming a thing. So there's so many careers now that just didn't even exist when I was in high school. But yeah, I did not start thinking about career stuff until basically after college.
Yeah. I was going to say, when did you first get exposed to realizing there were other paths you could take after college?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, same thing. I was more focused on academics in college, but I really still didn't have much insight into what like business type careers existed. So I really was probably in my early 20s before I started really getting an understanding for what the different career paths were that were out there.
You did world political economy at Colorado College. Was that something you were interested in out of high school that you thought you wanted to continue, or was that something you felt was going to help you later on? What did you choose?
Yeah, it was world political economy was basically like a half of an econ major and half of a political science major. And so it was it appealed to me because it was a little more broad and diverse than just doing economics. And I was definitely interested in the political science stuff. So it just appealed to me as a nice, well-rounded major that was close enough to, Colorado College didn't then and doesn't now have like a business major per se. So it was like kind of, I figured that was fairly close to a business major, and maybe I could figure out how to get a job coming out of college.
Was there anything you did at college that you felt transferred really well into the few years after before you went and did your MBA or continuing into your career?
I mean, I think that the things that I probably did well in college was one, I was really curious, and so I was always trying to learn more, and not just academically, but also like, I kind of grew up in this kind of provincial, Portland, Oregon community, and I didn't know kids that had gone to prep school. I didn't know anyone from east of Denver. And so all of a sudden I was surrounded by a lot of kids that had grown up on the East Coast and had gone to prep school. And I started just learning about, their childhoods and, what their families had done, and started learning about like, oh, wow, like investment banking in New York, or venture capital in the Bay Area, or being an executive at a technology company, right? Like those were things I kind of didn't even know existed until I started meeting other students and learning about what their families had done in life. Um, so yeah, I think that was, the other, and in terms of like a critical skill, I mean, the thing that I did well in college is I learned how to become a really good writer. And so, in my professional career, I've always been the person that people have asked to help with everything from drafting an email to writing a proposal, or, a presentation or something like that. So again, something that's you know, well within your ability to like, you can learn how to be a good writer,
Yeah.
and,
That's the one thing I've noticed too. Writing is a skill a lot of people focus on. Right? All my friends would have tutors. The majority of them are writing tutors.
Is that
It's
right?
just, it's the one skill that everyone needs to be good at, especially with the rise of AI. If you can sound human and communicate emotions and everything through your writing, it's amazing.
I totally agree. Yeah, I can't emphasize that enough.
And so through Colorado College, you met Pete, obviously.
Yeah.
And that's a small part of your network, but how do you think networking played into your career? Do you think knowing people and being able to connect was a big skill that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my, after college, I didn't have I mean, again, it was such a different world back then. It's not like you had to start, in your sophomore year to get an internship for your junior summer, so most of my friends, graduated from college. Very few of my friends at graduation had jobs lined up for post college. So, a buddy of mine, Pete, and I moved to France together. Um, and that was at that stage, that was less about networking and more about just, um, seizing an opportunity to go do something that, I figured worst case is, I moved to France, and 6 weeks or 8 weeks later, I'm going to run out of money, and then I'll have to move back home. At which point I'm no worse off than I would have been if I would have just stayed home.
So do you still have that experience? So experiences are the one thing people can't take away from you.
Right. Absolutely. So instead, things worked out, and I ended up spending 2 years there. So, for me, the career story around France is much more around like creating your own luck. And that was something, I mean, I'll tell the quick story, or I'll tell the story because I think it's kind of interesting. And actually it does tie into networking. There was a Colorado College alum who was running the capital markets desk for Citibank Paris. And I tracked him down, and after I badgered him for several weeks, he finally agreed to let me come in and meet him. And he told me, you can come meet me, but you're never going to get a job here, Jason. Like we're turning down kids from, Stanford and Williams and Columbia, and, the Colorado College, you're just not, you don't have the hard skill set to come work on the capital markets desk at Citibank Paris. And so, and he was right. I didn't know the first thing about anything when it comes to that. So, but he was gracious enough to let me, to agree to see me. So I went in to see him, and I was sitting in the lobby, and a man came and sat down next to me, and he was visibly anxietal and sweating. And I introduced myself to him and tried to make some small talk, and asked him where he was from. And he responded that he was from the Ivory Coast, that he was French, but born in the Ivory Coast. And I said, oh, Houphouët Boigny. And Houphouët Boigny was the benevolent dictator of the Ivory Coast for about 30 years. And his eyes sort of lit up, and he said, how do you know about Houphouët Boigny? And I said, well, I studied him in university, which is not true. I had played in a band in college, and we played a reggae song called Ja Houphouët, which was a sort of an ode to Houphouët Boigny. So I didn't know anything about the benevolent dictator of the Ivory Coast other than his name. But that was enough to impress this guy that some 22-year-old American knew something. And so he said, what are you doing here? And I said, I'm waiting to meet Mark St. John to get a job. And he said, well, any American college student who knows who Houphouët Boigny is smart enough to do the job that I need. So if I go in and tell Mark that I want to hire you, will you go in and say that you want to work for me? And without even asking what the job was, I said yes. And by the time I went in to go meet with Mark, he was blown away that somehow I had negotiated to get myself a job in the lobby. And it was a very entry-level job. It was working in the operations group, controlling the capital markets trade activity. They were doing interest rate and currency and equity derivatives trades. But, I reflect on that, and if Mark had never agreed to meet me, or if I had decided, it's a waste of time to go meet this guy, he's already told me I'm not going to get a job. Or if I hadn't have asked the guy sitting next to me where he was from, or if I wouldn't have known the name of the benevolent dictator of the Ivory Coast, right? Like, there were all of these decision nodes. Or if he had shown up 10 minutes later, or if, it was just serendipitous that it all came together. And whenever that's one of my biggest things is like finding out, you just have to, it's really hard to do, but you have to create your own luck. That I've always said that there's sort of 3 ingredients to success: professional success, career success. It's, having some innate ability to do the job, right? Yeah. Like, ideally you're very good at it, but you at least have to be competent. You can't be terrible at the job. So that's 1. 2 is hard work, right? You can't just be a slacker. And then 3 is luck. And really successful people, most of the time, have all 3 of those. They're innately good. They have an affinity for the job, whatever it is, whether it's running, apartment, commercial real estate, or doing venture investing, or being an M&A attorney. So they have a high degree of affinity for doing the job. 2 is they work really hard. And 3 is that things have happened along their career that have, they've put themselves into positions of luck where they get asked to take over the law partnership or to take over the construction business because, they were because 1, they were good at what they did, and 2, they were hardworking, but 3, luck probably played a role. And what's, I think, critical is that you don't have to have all 3 of those things, but you have to have 2 of them. Yeah. Like, you can get by on being really good and really lucky and not working that hard, or you can get by on being really good and really hardworking, and maybe you never get the big lucky breaks, but you still have a great career. Yeah. But one of those 3 is not enough. You can't just be lucky, but not work hard and not be innately good at it, right? And you can't just be like, well, I'm really good at this, therefore I don't need to work hard and I don't need to worry about luck. Right? I kind of need two of those three.
And talking with the woman I interviewed before you, Miley Kapatzi, she had the same sentiment about luck as well, which was like she got lucky, but she put herself in positions where she knew she could get lucky and she was able to take advantage of that. She was ready to push forward and take that next step.
Right. So I'll give you another good example. My son Aiden's trying to pursue investment banking internships, and I told him a couple of weeks ago to meet me at the Madeira restaurant in Menlo Park for lunch, because there are a lot of investment bankers coming in and out of that place, and the one firm that he had a hard time. Well, there was one firm that he was having a hard time getting finding anyone to talk to. And we met for lunch, and as we were walking out, a friend of mine from that firm, an investment banker, came walking in, and 5 minutes later, that friend had offered to help Aiden, negotiate that firm's. And as we were walking out, I said, Aiden, that was a good example. And he cut me off because he knows me well. And he said, yeah, I know what you're going to say, Dad. That was a good example of creating your own luck.
Yeah.
And it's true. Like you go to the restaurant, you do the thing, whatever it is, to try to sitting in your room, scrolling LinkedIn and sending out random, emails is like a losing way to try to do anything. I think
you just blend in with everyone else. I think is the worst part.
Yes, totally.
After Paris, you kind of come back. You do an MBA at UNC.
No, I went to I moved to Singapore after Paris, and I spent 3 years there.
How was Singapore?
It was amazing, and that was another example of creating my own luck. Like I decided that going to Asia would be fun, and they spoke English in Singapore, and I found a guy that worked for Citibank in Singapore, and again, there was also sort of dogged persistence where I just kept hassling him, and then he kept telling me that there wasn't a job, and finally a friend of mine said, call him back and tell him, I'm going to move to Singapore, and if you don't hire me, then Chase Manhattan Bank will. And I called him back and I said, Bharat, I have a plane ticket. I'm coming to Singapore on May 8th. And if you don't give me a job, your biggest competitor, Chase Manhattan, will. And he started laughing, and he said, hang on, call me back in 10 minutes. And so then I called him back, and he had assembled some friends into a room, and he said, say that thing you just said to me. And I said, well, if you don't hire me, then Chase Manhattan will. And all of these guys started laughing. And he goes, and then there was this pause, and he goes, if you show up here, I'll give you a job. So again, I had nothing to lose, and Chase Manhattan wouldn't have given me a job, and he knew that, but he loved the attitude. Yeah. So then I was in Singapore for a few years. My third bout of good luck was, I did very poorly on the GMATs because I just didn't care, and I've never been good at standardized tests. So one of the schools I really wanted to go to for business school was University of North Carolina, because I wanted to play music as a musician, and there's a vibrant bluegrass scene in Chapel Hill, and I thought it would just be a fun place to spend 2 years, and maybe not super hard compared to going to Columbia or MIT. And I knew I had a lower chance of getting in because my GMAT scores weren't good. So the UNC recruiter came to Singapore, and she blew me off because on paper my credentials didn't look very good. And she called me and said, I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to meet, but I'm headed from my hotel to the airport. So, best of luck to you, And I said, wait a minute, why don't I get the company car, and I'll come pick you up at the hotel, and then we can drive to the airport together, and then we can talk for a half an hour while we're in the car. And so by the time she pulled up to the airport in Singapore in the back of a stretch BMW limo that I had organized, she verbally gave me an offer to come to UNC. She subsequently got fired in part for giving me a verbal offer because I set the new low bound for GMAT scores at UNC. I had the lowest GMAT score of anyone they'd ever accepted. There's a lesson in there somewhere as well, which is just because you're not good at standardized tests. Some people are really good at standardized tests and really bad at a lot of other things.
Yeah.
Some people are really good at, other things and not good at standardized tests.
Yeah.
That's okay.
That's funny too, because I have friends like that as well. Like I have a friend who we helped throughout all of his math stuff, and then the SAT blew us away.
Oh my
scores. That's the craziest thing.
That's funny.
But then UNC, what did you do there? You got an MBA?
Yeah, I got an MBA. And again, I think that the other reminder or the other lesson is sometimes so for the UNC example, as soon as she said that she wasn't going to be able to meet me, it would have been very easy for me to say, oh, that's too bad, shoot. And instead, fortunately I was able to turn a negative into a positive. The same thing happened at UNC. I started interviewing for private wealth management internships. Morgan Stanley did not interview at UNC. They only interviewed at Duke. But I called the recruiter and said, so back then at least, and probably now, the way it works for business school on Wall Street is if you're at a target school and a recruiter will come to campus and they'll have a big dinner or a big meeting, and they'll kind of, they'll probably identify a couple of people that they think are probably going to be really strong candidates, and then some others that they're not interested in. But most people that would show up at a Morgan Stanley dinner at Duke University for business school would probably get an offer to Morgan Stanley would pay for them to fly to New York and have a proper interview. But if you're at a non-target school, Morgan Stanley will not pay for you to fly to New York. Yeah. So I found out the name of the recruiter and called her and said, I know Morgan Stanley, I know, UNC is not a target school, but if I pay my own way and come to New York and come to your office, will you meet me for 20 minutes? And she said, yeah, I guess so. So on the designated date and time, a couple of weeks later, I showed up at her office and she wasn't there. Again, one response would be, well, this is never going to happen. This person totally blew me off, and clearly I'm not important, so I'm going to put my tail in between my legs and go back to North Carolina, which is sort of what I did. But by the time I got back, I called her and I just said, Tanya, I was in your office yesterday and, you weren't there. And she said, oh my God, I completely forgot. I'm so sorry. Tell you what, I will now buy you a plane ticket and get you a hotel room for the night. Come back up, next Wednesday, and we'll get a chance to meet. So again, what was very much seemingly a negative on the surface quickly turned into a positive because the power dynamic between me and her shifted overnight. She went from feeling like she was doing me a favor to feeling guilty that she had, caused me to, spend my own money to come up and whatnot. So I walked into her office a week later and she had a big poster of the Eiffel Tower behind her desk. And so I immediately started speaking to her in French. I asked her if she spoke French and she said yes, and struck up a conversation in French. And kind of the same thing within just a few minutes, it was pretty clear that the interview was going well. And she ultimately extended me an offer at the end of that interview. And, again, I think it's this, how do you put yourself in lucky positions? How do you not, something that seems like bad news on the surface or a bad outcome, it's not always the case. Sometimes you can really spin it into a positive.
And it's never really an outcome until you accept it as well. You can always keep it going. So
yeah, totally.
As long as you've never really accepted that it's over, you can always put yourself in another position to succeed.
Yeah. I think that's right.
So the offer you got from Morgan Stanley, was that for an internship or was that for a full position?
Well, it was for a post-business school training program. So 7 months in New York, and then all of the people in the program were then shipped to their respective offices, Boston, Denver, LA, Miami, San Francisco. So yeah, no, by then it was understood that, Morgan Stanley was hoping to, keep me for a long time, assuming it worked out.
And they did. You've had a 25-year career there now, right? So,
but out of that training class, there were 55 people that started in that training class, and there are 3 of us left.
really,
And of the ones I know, of the people from that group that I'm aware of, 2 or 3 have gone on to do really unbelievable things, but the vast majority of those people have not had impressive careers, and that's despite having graduated from
target schools,
Dartmouth, Harvard, Yale, Stanford,
coveted
Yeah.
Morgan Stanley training,
right.
all of that.
And I think that one of the reasons that explains, me and the 2 other people that have been successful out of that group, one didn't go to business school. Actually, neither of them went to business school. And then there's me. But for private wealth management specifically, which is it's very much a job where you're sort of like, all right, James, there's your desk and there's your phone and there's your computer. You've got 1 year to bring in enough clients. Otherwise, we're going to fire you. Okay, go. And so it's very much like it's on you to make it happen. And I think a lot of students, or a lot of people that had graduated from these top business schools, they were so used to always getting lots of feedback and lots of hand holding and tutors and, hey, am I doing a good job? And hey, can you help me? And like, that's not the scene at Morgan Stanley. Like, another way of saying it is that some of the students showed up and had a sense of entitlement. They were okay, Morgan Stanley, I'm here. I was on the Princeton tennis team. I went to Harvard Business School. What are you going to do to help me be successful? And the answer was nothing. Like, this is a meritocracy. Like, we're gonna let you sit here for a year. That's what we're gonna do.
And everyone else, like, we have enough incoming people that are smarter than you that, like, if you can't do it, there's
a long line of people that would love to do it, right? And so not having a sense of entitlement, I think, is really important. Even if you do end up going to Stanford or Harvard or whatever, that's great. Amazing schools. I'm not I mean, that's the other big thing, is that, a lot of the people that are successful in my industry, where, there's plenty that went to Harvard and Princeton and Yale, and there's plenty that went to Colorado College, and a ton of guys from U of O and University of Arizona that are at the top of the food chain within wealth management, and they're making millions and millions of dollars a year and have really important jobs. It doesn't matter where you go to school. I think that getting into a good college really helps with the first job. It really helps getting the first job, right? It's easier to get that first internship if you're coming from Stanford than if you're coming from, some other college that's not Stanford. Yeah. After that, I mean, no, I can't think of the last time anyone's asked me, if it's a billionaire interviewing me to find out if they're going to hire me to manage their family's billions of dollars. Not once has anyone ever said, wait, you went to Colorado College? I don't think that's high.
Clearly you can't do it.
Highbrow. Right, exactly. Yeah. The people who are successful in my industry, and I would suggest, and this would be something that you could probably look into as well as you interview people, is they have a chip on most of these people have a chip on their shoulder. There's something that's driving them to be successful. And it is, I grew up really poor, very close to, like, my dad was the groundskeeper at a golf course. Or my dad ran a Catholic bookstore is another example I know of. I made some mistakes in high school and got in some trouble and made some bad decisions and decided, I don't want to live in my parents' attic when I graduate from college, so I better get my act together, right?
Yeah.
Or, I don't know. Those are just some examples, but I think that most people that have been successful, that I can think of in my world, they've got a chip on their shoulder. There's something they're trying to prove. There's something they're trying to prove to themselves, their families, their parents, their kids, their grandparents, their college friends. Like, they're trying to prove something to someone, and sometimes that can be really unhealthy. But if you frame it the right way, I think it can actually be very healthy. No, this is the thing that's going to get me out of bed in the morning. Is, I'll never forget when, my next door neighbor told me that I was worthless and weak, and I'm just going to show him,
Yeah.
So I think you got to have a little bit of chip on your shoulder.
Yeah. That's what I love about ski racing as well, as you notice that competitive ski racers, one kid blew out his knee, was out for like a year and a half, and then came back the next race. He cut open his butt and was out for the rest of the season. And now he came back. He's doing a postgraduate year, and he's one of the best kids on the team. And he's like, screw them. Like, they all said I wasn't going to be able to come back.
Right.
Injury.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, so what? Like, I can come back.
Yeah. 100%.
He works harder than everyone, and he's in the gym twice as much as the rest of them, and he's killing it. So.
Well, I think that's it, is that some of these really stressful, the career that I'm in is similar to professional ski racing. It is, statistically, the odds of being successful are 1 in 100. And then if you're one of those one, then,
that just gets you up the next level.
That gets you up to the next level. Then you're one of 100 that are really good, but can you make a living off of it? And then only 1 out of 100 of those people. And then it's the 1 out of 100 that becomes, the
JV diamond.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. No, I think that's, you just hit the nail on the head, right? Which is, the kid that was told that he was going to not be a good ski racer because of injuries is the guy that's in the gym twice as much as everyone else.
Yeah. He was told, like, you're injured. It doesn't make much sense for you to do a PG year. You should go to college. You should focus on other stuff. I was like, no, I'm ski racing. I'm going to be the best at it. It's awesome. It's amazing to see the mindset shift and how much it really helps you out. And
Totally.
So after that, working up the chain at Morgan Stanley, What did that look like for you?
Well, I got to San Francisco right as the first internet bubble exploded, right? So Netscape went public in 1995, and everyone was using AOL Messenger, and Yahoo.com was the search engine, and you would plug your computer into the telephone line through a dial-up modem, and it was really clunky, but it was clear that this internet thing was the real deal. But then it could, like most things, the pendulum went too far in the wrong direction, and there was lightbulbs.com and batteries.com and diapers.com, and you, even as a relatively uninformed person new in the tech sector, it was obvious to me that a lot of these companies weren't going to make it. And so there was a bit of a recession in 2001, 2002, 2003, right as I was starting my career. And, again, that might be viewed as a negative, but I realized that it was going to be really hard for me to be successful if I tried to just be by myself. So I went and found the biggest, most successful team at the firm and just said, hey, I'm here and I'm going to be sitting over in that corner. And if you need anything, just let me know. And for a long time, they never asked. And I just kept going over and saying, hey, I overheard you're doing this. Have you seen this? I just tried to find any way I could to be helpful. And pretty soon, because the economy was tough, and the stock market was getting crushed, and investments across the board were struggling, some of the guys on this big team, maybe the kid with an MBA could actually help us with this problem we're having. responding to an angry email from a client kind of thing. So that's when my kind of writing skills kicked in. And pretty soon it was like, hey, I need to write an email. Can you write the email for me? And it was soul crushing because there were times where it was like people would go on a meeting that I wouldn't be invited to, and then they would come back and say, hey, can you write the email as if it was for me? Hey, Steve, dear Steve, very nice to meet you today. I enjoyed our conversation, blah, blah, blah. And, again, some people would have just not done that. Just said, no, if you invite me on the meeting, I'm happy to write the follow-up email, but you need to invite me to the meeting. And I just knew that
it's going to kind of alienate you.
Yeah. And they just weren't going to, that wasn't, I didn't, the other, I think, there's a saying like never negotiate from a position of weakness. And, I had no leverage in that conversation. If I would have said, well, I'm happy to write the email, but I need to go on the meeting, they would have said, well, fine, we can write the email. You're not coming to the meeting. First time I did a big project for the team, I said, hey, I'd really like to go. I put together a bunch of material that was going to be presented to a very prominent tech executive. And I said, here's the material. I'd really love to go on the meeting. And my now partner at the time said, I don't care if you come and I don't care if you don't come, which was I heard I'm coming to the meeting. But I think that there's a cycle or a step up function where in any career, certainly in a business setting, the first step is trying to figure out how to make yourself valuable. The second step is how do you make yourself invaluable, right? Like I'm now to the point in my career where there are certain things that won't get done unless I am the one doing them. There are certain clients that will not stay at Morgan Stanley unless I am the one at Morgan Stanley. So I've made myself invaluable. Yeah. But 26 years ago, I was disposable, right? Yeah. Like there was
40 other kids who could write just
100%. 100%.
Yeah. And so, yeah, and then that puts you in a position where you can say, hey, I'd like to be in those meetings and I'd like to do this stuff because there's stuff that just won't get done.
Right. Well, and now I don't want to go to the meetings, right? Like I'm too busy doing other things that I would much rather have someone else that is acting on my behalf do all of the pre-meeting work and put together the presentation and go run the meeting, and I just get to show up
and they're passionate about that because they want to take that stuff on as well. So it's you have someone who's willing to work hard and be passionate about that stuff, and then you can come in and kind of do what you need to do.
Yep. That's exactly right. Yeah.
So then, what just kind of overall, what skills did you pick up throughout your time? Paris, Singapore, back to UNC. Like, what do you think you picked up that was just invaluable?
I mean, listen, I think the most important skill, and this isn't even just for careers, this is for life, is get curious and stay curious. And like, I'm a really good example. When I was in high school, I wasn't curious about much except for, partying and the Grateful Dead. I didn't really care about anything else. But over time, I got more and more curious. And part of the reason for that is that the second thing that I think is really important is, there's one of my friends likes to say, you are an average of your 5 closest friends. And so, yeah, like you look around your friend group, and if your friends are, making bad decisions or just sitting in their room, playing video games all day, doing nothing. And hey, if that's your thing, great. But, for me, I got to the point where in that analogy, I got bored sitting in the room just playing video games all day. And I was like, there's got to be more to life than sitting here.
This is who I'm going to become. This is who
Right. Exactly. Totally. So I started surrounding myself with people that thought that learning was cool. Like when I was in high school, there was like the jocks, and then there was the stoners, and then there was the nerds. And I didn't want to be a nerd, and like learning wasn't cool. And then I got to college and met a bunch of people who love to have fun and like a lot of fun, and but they also were proud of the fact that they could recite The Raven by Edward Allan Poe, or that they understood what the Abyssinian War of 1912 was, or right, like these they were psyched to learn, and they were curious. And so I think I had always been curious, but I had kind of buried it a little bit. And then that curiosity came back. So, man, staying curious. And that's, again, it's not just, as you get older and your mind, you got to keep your mind sharp. Best way to do it is to stay curious, right?
Read, learn about random stuff.
I try to read every day. I do read every day. I do the crossword puzzle every day. I do Scrabble every day. I read the Wall Street Journal cover to cover every day. Like, these are now just ingrained habits, and they're not hard. It might sound like all those things might sound like a burden. And if you would have told 20-year-old me, or definitely 18 or 16-year-old me, like, hey, you should read the Wall Street Journal cover to cover every day and do the New York Times crossword puzzle, I'd be like, I don't want to do any of that. But it's like I'm like living proof that like you can evolve.
Yeah.
And now it's just like I am a very curious person. And yeah, you mentioned networking earlier. I mean, networking's so tricky because if you're too aggressive about it, if you're too direct about it, you can really turn people off. And at the same time, if you're too obtuse or indirect about
it, one email and you're like, oh,
well, yeah, they might not even know that you were trying to network with them. Yeah. So it's sort of like, how do you strike this happy medium? And one of the things that, I tell people all the time is like, try to find something. Maybe it's a podcast. Ideally, it's a podcast that you're actually doing.
Yeah.
Maybe it is just a recap of, The Economist magazine comes out once a month. And what is the, maybe it's weekly, I don't know, but whenever it comes out, like doing a quick read of that, running it through ChatGPT, coming up with a summary, but some sort of content that you can start sending out to a network of people on an email. And you start that when you're 18, when you're 17 or 16, and you just add to it. And by the time you're 25, there could be, if you do a good job, there could be hundreds or thousands of people. And it's just hey, here's a quick recap of the things. And it can't be like, this is the recap of my life. Monday I skied, and Tuesday I skied, and Wednesday I skied. Like, they're not going to care about any of that stuff. But original content podcast would be, hey, this is my podcast for the week. Even if someone in Nebraska that you meet at a golf retreat has never even heard of Sugar Bowl, like, they might be like, oh yeah, that's right, I remember I met that kid and he was talking about, he lives in this and he's got this podcast thing. Yeah, I'll listen to it. Maybe they only listen to it twice, but when you then reach out to that person and say, hey, remember we met at the thing, and I sent you my thing with the podcast. And they're like, yeah, I do remember you. Like, I only listened to your podcast twice. It wasn't really for me, but like, that was pretty cool. Yeah, you did that.
I remember it.
Right? It's just, how do you differentiate yourself in a world where there are a lot of really smart, really aggressive, really hungry people out there looking for jobs? And with AI, I think that's, likely going to continue and maybe even get tougher. And, one thing that Brad Kirshner likes to say is, it's never been harder to get a job, but it's also never been easier to start your own company. So again, it goes back to that mindset of, you could doom scroll and go, oh my God, why even bother? Because AI, I was going to try to, be a research analyst for biotech, and now ChatGPT is going to do that job better than me. That's not the right way to think about it. The right way to think about it is like, wow, this is a evolutionary sea change that's happening. There's got to be an angle, right? Like, what is the angle? What can I start an AI company where, we sit in the middle between the LLMs and the biotech companies? Or I don't know. And that's part of the problem is, or it's a problem and an opportunity, but those things are out there.
But you can't have that mindset of like, oh, it's going to take this away from me. It's like, how do I use it to better what I was originally going to do?
Like humanoid robots that resemble celebrities. I think there are going to be agents, like PR agents, that go out and like try to represent famous people when humanoid robots are made in their likeness. Like that's a job that doesn't exist right now, and it may never exist. But like I'm just saying, there are all of these. The example, I've got a friend at Morgan Stanley is a futurist, and so his job is to sit around and think about the future. And he's like, yeah, a lot of jobs are going to get destroyed, but guess what? We're going to need lunar geologists. Like there isn't a lunar geologist, or there aren't many of them right now on this planet.
Everyone thought the internet was going to destroy a bunch of jobs. It turns out like you just use it for a bunch of other stuff. And so
the Luddite revolt in England in the whenever it was 18th century was because the loom was going to replace all of the people that sat at home and sewed. And
the cotton gin, people thought the cotton gin was going to get rid of slavery, and it turns out no, you need people to work the cotton gin. So.
Printing press, combustion engine. Yeah. Now, this one is, probably, I've heard some people say this is bigger than everything else combined, but there are still going to be, I think, really interesting opportunities. And if you look at the demographics right now, certain industries like mine are dominated by middle-aged, mostly men who are very set in their ways and don't have the faintest idea how to use AI. So there's a huge opportunity for people of your generation to either go to those people and say, hey, here's an idea of how you can use AI, right? Or don't go to them and figure out how you can do the thing better than they're doing it and just get them
do it better.
Totally. Put them out of business. And again, the idea of starting your own company, like you no longer need to be able to write programming language, right? Like it's literally as simple as coming up with a clever name. The incorporation documents you can do on Rocket Lawyer online in 15 minutes. You could create a company, and we could create a company in the next 20 minutes, and it would be a legitimate Delaware-based organization, right? And
then it's just up to you of how well you can run it, and like it just puts it all on you. And so if you're good enough, you can succeed, and if you don't have confidence in yourself,
totally. And I just think that the sky's the limit on, and like especially when you're young, like start the AI dream analysis company or the AI VR headset that allows you to look at whatever you're looking at through different geological eras, right? Like, I wonder what Sugar Bowl would look like in 1 million BC. Yeah. Like, there's a gajillion different ways you
directions on the road, right?
And so, again, it's sort of like my decision to move to France. Like, what's the worst case is it doesn't work, and then
worst case, you spend $900 on an LLC, and it's like.
And guess what? You probably have a pretty good story. And if you're thinking in the world of business and you're thinking about ultimately applying to business schools love those stories. Yeah, I started an AI company and it was a total disaster. And guess what? This is what I learned. And when I start my next company, and I need help from you,
you're going to teach me how to do it properly next time.
And with your help, I can go out and do this the right way. Like there is no better.
That persistence and that skill of starting it. I just need the skills to keep it going, and that's what
totally teach me. Totally, that's exactly it. So I think that's the I don't know. I think if I were to leave you with any it's just like be curious, try to figure out ways to create your own luck, try to figure out clever ways to network. Never, you every once in a while you hear these stories of like so-and-so, submitted like the job market is really tough. So-and-so submitted 300 applications and they didn't get any answers. Well, guess what? They were doing it the wrong way, right? Yeah. Like it's sitting in your house and just sending out cold emails to people that have never heard of you for maybe jobs that you're not qualified to be applying for in the first place is not the way to get a job. Right.
Yeah.
And, the other great, like I never said it was going to be easy, but I did say, that it was going to be worth it. Like it's starting early. It's being organized, and not freaking out about this. I think that if you can go through the next several years, whether it's applying to college or applying to your first internship or your first full-time job, like you're young, you can take risks. You're going to get a lot of no's. You're going to get a lot of rejections in life. Even the best, most capable people, just know is a part of life. And you have to have that resilience to learn how to take no and not have it feel like an indictment of you as a person. Like, oh my God, they didn't give me the offer. I'm terrible. I'm worthless and
never
weak.
going to succeed. They clearly don't see the skill set in
right. Like the attitude needs to be, those guys are idiots. I can't believe they didn't get me. Or, you know what? I'm going to think really critically about, you know what? I wasn't prepared for the interview. Or I don't like the way I answered that question. I need to work on my answer to that question. Right. So, it's not, as soon as you start taking this stuff really personally and it starts feeling existential, it becomes so overwhelming that it shows, right? And so just you're young and, like at this point, failure and setbacks are just a part of life and you have to learn how to deal with them. Sorry. So yeah. And, again, it's the take a risk, go to, graduate from high school, take a PG year and, move to, Argentina, start an airline company. I have a friend that did that. Like, go do the thing that you probably are never going to do again. It gets a lot harder to move to Argentina and start an airline company when you're my age and have kids.
There's skills you learn from everything you do in life that, really, like those skills don't get taken away from you. So.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is like, I'm, as I said at the beginning of this, like my career path has been way more about where I've wanted to live. Like, oh, I think living in Paris would be cool. Or living in North Carolina or Singapore or San Francisco would be cool. And then it was secondly about, well, I know I don't want to be a consultant and I don't want to be a doctor and I don't want to be a lawyer. So it was like this process of elimination that was like, well, I guess private wealth management is probably what I should do. So I think the ideal way to approach this is to have something that you really want to do, right? Like I want to be a geologist in the Mojave Desert because that's what makes me tick. Like I love that stuff.
And then the next step is how do I do that?
Right.
I'm going to do
right.
that.
And the why and the how and the how you get paid for it, all of that stuff works out. And I know plenty of people who have tried to pursue careers just because they knew that there was going to be good money in it. And like they were successful, but like it's like now they're stuck doing things that they don't really like doing. And now it's way too late to change. Yeah. So there's a great,
and now they're just looking for what,
yeah, right. To go maybe, right. Yeah. Maybe try to
go ski or go do what they love.
Whatever they love. Right. So there's a great, there's this thing and you can look it up on the internet. It's called the Ikigai. It's Ikigai. And it's like this little Venn diagram. And I think Ikigais are used across all sorts of use cases. But for careers, I've seen one where it says, like, there's 4 circles and they kind of interconnect like a Venn diagram. And the 4 circles are, what do I like to do? What am I good at? What can I get paid to do? And what does the world need? And so I like to use the example of, I have a friend who's a pediatrician. She knew from when she was 8 years old that she wanted to be a pediatrician. She's really good at it. She works for Stanford University. She gets paid well for doing it. And I think it's safe to say that the world needs good pediatricians. So like in that Venn diagram, she is right in the middle. She is like nailed it. If I know 100 people, she might be the only one I can think of that fits right in the middle, right? I know a lot of people that are, what am I good at? And where can I make money, right? Like that's where most people are. I also know some people that are I've got a friend that teaches soccer on an Indian reservation in New Mexico, and he loves doing it, and the world needs it, but he doesn't get paid a whole lot for it. But that's okay.
He's psyched on it.
He's so psyched on it. But thinking about that, those four things. What do I like to do? Like, I like playing the mandolin. I'm not very good at it. I would argue the world needs mandolin players. It's not that.
Yeah.
And by the way, when you look at you should check out this career ikigai thing that I was referring to, because it's also helpful for like, hey, if I like something but I'm not particularly good at it, maybe that should be a hobby. Maybe that shouldn't be a job, right? And so thinking about what's the difference between a hobby and what is a vocation kind of thing. Yeah.
Sweet. All right. Well, do you have anything else?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Well, I'm going to end off with one final question. What's your favorite Sugar Bowl memory?
Ooh, it was playing guitar with Dark and Stormy Band on Tuesday, and having all of you guys out in the front row rocking out and listening to us, and that realization that my kids my kids are good skiers and they like the Grateful Dead. So my work as a father, my work is done.
Yeah, that was pretty sweet.
That was fun. Thanks for coming.
I enjoyed it.
All right, James.
Well, thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
It was great talking.
Likewise.